All right, now we're gonna go ahead and just lay out the Revenant. Now for me, benchmark layout I use on symmetrical balls, 4.5 by 5 by 4, 2 LS. Now when laying out a symmetrical ball, the easiest thing to do first is to just draw out a fake PSA. You do that by lining up through the pin and the CG and just drawing out a line. We'll draw the line first. Just go straight through the center of them. Nothing fancy. Then put the 0 on the pin, and at 6 3/4 inches away, just going to make a mark here. Now this mark here is our fake PSA. That just helps you have a second point to measure from, triangulate your access point, makes everything easier, and it's the same as if you were doing an asymmetrical ball. You just get in the habit of doing it every time. Keep everything consistent. So the main goal here is we want to orient the pin and the PSA away from our access point, which is where the ball starts spinning directly off of our hand. And by determining how far or how close those measurements are, you get to dictate how much flare you want, what type of ball reaction you want, within reason. The ball, the cover, and the core are going to dictate most of that, but you can adjust it with your layouts. So for me, I know I want my pin to be 4.5 inches away from my pat, so I'm going to start with the arc ruler dead center on the pin, and I'm going to draw an arc 4.5. Okay, just like that. Now the second number in the Storm VLS system doesn't really matter on Symmetrics. I use longer numbers. This really just helps to keep this logo away from my palm because I track over there, so I try and keep this out to the side. So I use longer numbers on that second number. That's one way you can cheat the system a little bit. If you get one where the logo is, you know, in your palm and you know you track over that, it doesn't really matter. I just don't like the way it looks and I don't like the way it sounds going down the lane. So I try to avoid that. To do that, the most effective way I've found is using longer pin to PSA on the layout. So for me, I'm going to use 5 inches here. So we're going to start from our fake PSA right here. And I'm going to draw 5 inches, 5-inch arc over there. Now this dictates, this is our access point. So when we release the ball, that's where it's going to spin. And we kind of got to dictate that based on how far we want it away from the pin PSA. So that's our first intersection arc. That's our positive access point. The third arc in the Storm 2LS system is your pin to center of grip. You're always just going to go to the opposite side of the ball. So if you're looking at it this way, you got your first intersection over here. Your second one's going to be over here. You can just kind of get used to that. I flip the ball around, makes it easier. Same thing, we start dead center of the pin. For me, I want my pin to center of grip distance to be 4 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw an arc. You make this one pretty big, that way you can make sure the second one intersects it without having to worry about it. Now the fourth arc is the most annoying. You just kind of get to know this. If you are doing this for yourself, you just get to use the same number every time. I'll pull up the sheet here on Storm's website. This is the Storm Lightning arc chart. For me, my positive access point is 5.5 over, 1.5 inches up. Follow that down on their chart and you can see where they intersect. That means that my lightning arc is 5 5/8 inches. So you measure that from your access point. So we're just gonna center the arc ruler on our access point here so you guys can see it. And then at 5 5/8 inches away, we're going to intersect this arc over here. Okay, so orient the ball back to normal, pin up top, positive access point, center of grip. You can double check this as always with your ProSect. Put the 0 on one of them, and right there you can see 5 5/8. So we know that those are correct. We know our center of grip is going to be here, but because there's not a third straight up and down or left and right to orient this, technically your fingers could be, you know, 360 degrees around that point. So for our third and final arc, we just reverse your axis point. So I know this is my axis point here. And in order to measure this, I know that I'm going to go 5.5 over, 1.5 inches up. So we're just going to do that in reverse instead. So we're going to go 1.5 inches down from the axis point. Just draw an arc. This will be simple, quick, easy. Now we're going to draw a line. This last final line, tangent to this, intersecting this. Tangent just means like a ball on a table. You just want to get it one point, one flat spot. So I'm going to, let me get the camera here for you so you can see both of these arcs. I want to just touch this circle here, and I want to intersect over here where we know our center of grip is going to be. So that looks pretty good for me right there. And I usually extend these lines out because I know what's coming next. Just a good habit to get into. I'm just going to show you again real quick. Again, this is the pin up top for orientation, so you know what we're looking at. This is my axis point. This was the 1.5 inch arc because that's how far my vertical axis point measurement is. This is what tangent looks like. You can see I drew the arc, and the line we just drew just barely touches it, just at one point. All right. And that same line came over here and intersected the two arcs we drew before it. And now we have our midline, is what we just drew. From the midline, perpendicular to that, through our center of grip, will give us our center line. Line up to 0, get the spine, and we are drawing this directly perpendicular to the midline that we just drew. My pencil's not very sharp, so I missed it a little bit, but that's okay. All right, again, just so you guys can see the orientation of the ball, what's really going on here. Pin, center of grip, center line, midline, axis point. Okay, now I'm gonna just reverse everything, just double check everything with the prosect. I know that this is my center of grip. I'll line up the zeros. And over here, I'm going to make a line at 5.5 inches. Okay. Now I'm going to draw the vertical axis line. And you can see how when I draw my vertical axis line, it directly cuts right into where I know my positive axis point is. So again, just putting the ball back to square so you can see what's going on. Center of grip, I drew my midline over 5.5. I went up and just drew this full line, which is your vertical axis line, VAO. And then at 1.5 inches, this is where my axis point is going to be. Right there. Okay. Last thing you have to do is just draw out your bridge lines. I get the prosect lined up just like that. 1. And 2. Okay. For two-handed, no thumb bowlers, remember you always drill directly onto the midline. So that is where my finger holes will end up being. And again, you can always double check whatever you want to check. So right here from the center of grip to the pin, 4 inches. Pin to pap, 4.5. And you already saw me measure over my axis point measurements, 5.5, right here. By 1.5 inches up, and that is the axis point. So that's what the layout's going to end up looking like for me. You can see it right here. My fingers will be right there. My pin is directly above my ring finger, about 4 inches. 4.5 from my access point. The fake PSA doesn't matter, but this is where it would be. So if we pretend this was an asymmetrical ball, my mass bias would be right there. See if I can get all of those into the picture for you. Pin, CG, mass bias, center of grip, access point. And that's all there is to lay it out. I'll drill this up here in a minute and we'll take a look at it.